Oh, that is certainly not a live shot right now. That is not Rip City's finest that is flying over Portland right now.
Good looking shot, though.
That is a great looking shot, yeah. But, yeah, it is miserable outside, and glad you're inside watching us on Trailblazers Courtside. Hey, we just found proof, at least as far as Twitter goes, that you can take the boys out of Rip City, but you can't take Rip City out of the boys. Look at what they are doing down in Houston as they are on their way to dinner. That is Mike Barrett. And, oh, that's Adam Silver's name. There you go.
That's cool.
That is cool.
They are obviously not having a password login problem.
That is right. Watching Trailblazers Courtside on their digital devices. That is what we do. All right, fans, don't miss Rip City Mornings with Bunker and Danforth. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Rip City Radio 620. Get entertaining local sports talk, including weekly visits from C.J. McCollum and head coach Terry Stotts, who I listened to this morning. Bunker and Danforth do a great job. Make Rip City Mornings your destination for Blazers talk each and every weekday. It is on Rip City Radio, AM 620. We talk about the weather here. Apparently the weather in Houston, not as nice as it usually is maybe this time of year. They get thunderstorms from time to time. We saw a tweet earlier from another Blazer reporter for the Oregonian, Joe Freeman, who waited out 6 hours at the airport today for a 41-minute flight from New Orleans to Houston.
He could have drove.
Well, ironically, that's funny that you even bring that up because Casey Holdahl offered to leave his car behind for him, and we're going to go to live to Houston now via the good old telephone as well and catch up with Casey once again. Usually I'd ask what's the plan for an off night in Houston, but I've heard you on the radio all day today, so I know the off day for Casey Holdahl involves doing plenty of research on these Trailblazers, answering all these great demands that are just out there for you. You're on every radio station in Portland. What is up, my friend? Good evening to you.
It's going well over here, Adam. Good evening to you as well, and to you, Michael, as well. Yeah, it's been I typically try to stay pretty busy on the road. The broadcast guys, obviously, when there's not a game that night, they don't have a whole lot to do. But for me, there's, as long as I've got any kind of interview that I've already done, there's still work to be done. So I'm actually working on a story right now about Al-Farouq Aminu and hoping to get that posted tonight and then move straight into a pregame for tomorrow.
Dude, you're a man of the people. Everyone just wants more Casey Holdahl.
Well, I don't know if they want more, but we're going to see. We're going to reach a plateau here, I'm guessing, pretty soon. I'm guessing anyone who's caught all three of my interviews today is probably rather sick of hearing from me at this point in time.
Guilty as charged right here.
But law of diminishing returns, as they say. So.
But as you're working on Al-Farouq Aminu, then let's just kind of speak to you right where you are right now. Talk a little bit about him as an aggressive and assertive scorer, and can that be do you think he can be a consistent third scorer on this team?
I do. I think that, I thought that, Jason Quick in his kind of notebook that he put out today made some pretty good points that, Farouk's been doing a great job shooting the three, and he has been the most, I think, aggressive Trailblazer on the offensive end outside of Damian and CJ, but he's just had, a hard time finishing at the rim, and not because he's not good at it, but he's just making aggressive mistakes, and that's what they talk about a lot, particularly with young guys, is, guys are going to make mistakes, they're going to turn the ball over sometimes, but as long as they're making those mistakes or they're doing those things when they're really trying to force the issue and be aggressive, that's not such a bad thing, and I think that's what we've seen from Chief in the first 9-10 games with the Trailblazers is that, in his new role that he's been given, which is, he's got a lot of free reign in Terry's offense, and he's going to use it. And, sometimes that turns out great. Other times, it's a bit of a work in progress. But I think it's good that he's putting himself out there like that, and he's extending kind of the skills and the roles that he's had in previous seasons. And just like everyone else on this team, it's going to take some getting used to. But I think the early returns are that he is up to that task. And I think, obviously, I think you bring in Al-Farouq for his defensive prowess, but I think what they've been getting from him offensively has been great as well, and I think that's something that we can probably look forward to going forward through this season.
Yeah, averaging about 13 and 7 per game so far is Aminu, and a lot of these guys in new roles. Casey, we love incorporating you, by the way, on our pregame show on the TV side. We're going to be doing that a lot more. But I'm telling you, this public display of affection that you and Benko the Buck did on Sunday afternoon, and I know this is completely unplanned, but I know we've got video proof of of it. I think we're going to go to it now.
We're going to go to the tape?
We're
Okay,
going to the
good.
tape, the tail of the tape. You can't lip lock it. We got to keep this to a minimum, this public display of affection. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
Well, I kind of feel like, Robin left us this offseason, so I think we've got some fence mending to do with the mascots of the NBA, and then, Bango is one of the premier mascots in the NBA, and I'm an animal lover, as I said on air. So I mean, who am I to turn down some affection, particularly out here on the road? We're out here by ourselves. Our wives aren't out here, so we gotta find love anywhere we can get it.
Okay, all right, let's get the train back on the track.
Yeah.
Get the train back on
You
the track.
handled it with grace, by the way.
Not me. You guys took it there. I'm just following your lead.
I got the train. I'm the train back on the track. Now, talking about Al-Farouq Amino. I mean,
Hey, did the team practice today? I didn't even ask Coach Triano that.
It was a maintenance day today, so
Okay.
I'm guessing they probably did some H&P, which is weightlifting and training and probably some treatment. But they didn't have immediate availability. Typically, the day after a back-to-back, they usually don't practice. I know, particularly with a young team, I think that they do still try to get together, particularly when they're on the road, and maybe just review film or again just do some light calisthenics, but no, they did not have a practice day. They will have shoot-around tomorrow morning, though, so we'll be able to get at them at that time.
And you will be there. There will probably be a radio interview before, during, and then after that actual session. So we'll listen for Casey on any variety of networks that you can listen to. Casey, some teams have problems early in the season, and a lot of them are correctable, but the issues that are plaguing the Houston Rockets might be a little concerning right now. They've lost 4 games in a row. A couple of their losses have been bad losses. They lost to the Brooklyn Nets. They lost, most of these are all by double digits. There might be a little bit of internal strife going on. Well, what is your take on the Houston Rockets, tomorrow's opponent?
I mean, it's a bit tough to figure at this point. I know, news came out today that I don't know if you can even call it as news, but, that they had a players-only meeting. And, when you're having players-only meetings,
Yeah.
2 weeks into the season, that's not typically a great sign, particularly because these guys see each other every day anyway. So it's not like if you got something to say, you can say it to a guy. You don't need to set aside a particular time for that.
Right.
But as far as what's going on with them, I mean, when you add a guy like Ty Lawson to your team, it's going to change the way that you play, particularly when you have such a dynamic guy in the backcourt like James Harden, who does like to play with the ball in his hands. So I think that's got something to do with it. But they've been horrible defensively. I think they're defensive efficiency-wise, they're the worst team in the NBA. And, I mean, for a team that has Dwight Howard and has a guy like Patrick Beverly, it's kind of odd to see that. So at this point, it might just be a case where they just got to get on the same page. And if you watch some of the games of theirs too, particularly their game last night against the Celtics, I mean, it just seemed like they kind of rolled over at the end of that game. Which,
Right.
Anyone who watched the series against the Rockets a couple years back should know that. I mean, that was such a great series because both teams wouldn't give each other an inch. And granted, that was the playoffs, and this is early season, so maybe there's. You make some moves. You've got guys on your team who are, top 10, top 15 players, and maybe you just figure you're going to be able to roll the ball out there and win ball games. And, in the NBA, that's just never the case. So, I mean, if I could tell you what the Rockets were doing wrong, I'd probably be actually coaching somewhere rather than just asking dumb questions of coaches here. But, that's a problem they're going to have to get figured out. But hopefully they won't get it figured out before tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah, don't get it figured out in time for tomorrow's game.
Yeah, the Rockets are a team, I think, that are offensive in their focus entirely. I mean, James Harden has the ball so much, so other players aren't able to even get involved on the offensive end on a team that focuses on offense. So if you don't touch the ball and you're not a part of movement and execution on the offensive end, you don't get as involved on the defensive end. I've seen it time and time again. It's a dynamic that just occurs that way. But I want to talk to you about the Trailblazers defense, particularly for a second, Casey, from the standpoint of I'm on the Mason Plumlee kick tonight in terms of what he does offensively, setting screens and roll. But I don't think anybody knows that he leads this team defensively in steals, and so he's quietly anchoring his defense.
He is, and I think Mason has done a lot of things that I didn't know that he could do, and I think you're right. He's got real active hands, and he does a really nice job of kind of getting in there and swatting the ball away, just as he's done a really nice job of diming to guys on the offensive end. I feel like Mason's done a really nice job, and maybe kind of one of the guys who's been maybe we haven't given him as much attention as maybe he's deserved, because I think he's done a really nice job at that starting position, particularly since, now that Myers has been out, he's been kind of going back and forth with. He's playing with Chris, he's playing with Vonleh, and obviously the Blazers are rotating guys on a fairly consistent basis at that position anyways. So, and he's done a really nice job of kind of staying consistent, even though he's playing alongside different guys from time to time. And, I really feel like, to your point, Mike, that on the defensive end, he is kind of holding that paint down. I have to check some of the stats, but I'm pretty sure the Blazers are doing a decent job when it comes to their paint defense. It's on the perimeter where I feel like they're kind of getting hurt sometimes, and I think they have shown some growth in that respect. I was listening to Coach Triano on the show earlier, and yeah, after having a really kind of a poor effort, particularly in the first half of the game against the Hornets, I thought they came out and did a really nice job defensively last night against the Spurs. And obviously, they had a difficult time getting shots to go as well. But, holding a team like the Spurs to, I think, less than 40% from the field, I think in the second half, or at least in the first half, I think they shot under 30% from the field, the Spurs. So, I think that's going to kind of be what you're going to see from the Trailblazers on a night-in, night-out basis. And I think it's a lot of what people talked about earlier in the season, is that some nights, they're going to do a really nice job, and they're going to be able to stay with teams, particularly in the fourth quarter. Some teams are going to be able to pull away from them, as we saw, with the Spurs last night. And that's just kind of going to be the way things go, but at least early in the season. But if they can continue to make growth, and like you said, Michael, kind of have a guy like Plumlee kind of locking things down in the middle, have a guy like Farouk kind of controlling or moving guys in the direction they want to move them to kind of take away what they do best. And I think as they kind of get more comfortable with that, know where each other's going to be on the defensive end, I think you're going to see some of those issues that they've had early in the season start to mitigate. And hopefully, that was kind of what happened early in Terry's tenure with the team. The Blazers were kind of a score team, and the defense was just kind of, middle of the road. And as it went on, they got a lot better, and they ended up having a top 10 defense last year. So, they've shown that they can use the system, and they can get to the point where they can end up starting kind of so-so on defense, and as the season goes on, really make strides to become a quality defensive team.
Not only does Casey Holdahl develop relationships with opposing mascots, he also does have relationships with former Trailblazer players. And that said, you talked to Nick Batum the other night, and he said, and he shook his head, Casey, that it was not about a revenge game for him against the Trailblazers, about his former team. He is so honest and sincere a lot of times when you hear from Nick. So I tend to believe what he says. But that just proved the entire notion about Nick Batum is that when he asserts himself into a game and does it and sustains it and does it on a consistent basis, that he can be one of the best players in the entire NBA. And we saw that against Portland the other night.
Yeah, and that's been the thing with Nick for his entire career. It's never been about, is Nick Batum talented? Because he's unquestionably talented. It's just, are you going to be able to get a baseline production from Nick on a night-to-night basis? And I've been one of Nick's biggest supporters throughout his career, but particularly last season, and he even admits it. He was straight up bad last year, and that was definitely a time when, if Nick was playing better, particularly after Wesley went down, maybe things don't kind of fall apart the way they did it towards the end of the season in the playoffs. But with Nick, it's just you could never count on it, and that's kind of why I even asked him. I was like, did you feel like maybe it's in some respects, Nick, it was time for a change because you'd been with the team for your first 7 years and you'd had some success, but it also seemed like you were just never able to kind of live up to your own expectations, let alone the expectations the team had for you. So, and he kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit and said, well, I realized that, once things with the way they did with LaMarcus, that was going to be the end of it for us. But, I think Nick is probably better off having a change of scenery. And to talk about Al-Farouq, I think, even if the highs of Al-Farouq Aminu aren't as high as the highs of Nick Batum, I think you feel a lot better with Chief on the team because I think on a night-in, night-out basis what you're going to get from him. Even if it's not maybe as great as what you could get from Nick, the average is going to be better.
No question.
And I think that, coaches really value knowing what you're going to get from a guy on a night-in, night-out basis.
Yeah, consistency.
And, they just didn't have that with Nick.
Yeah, definitely. That's how I feel when I go to a restaurant. I got to know what I'm going to get. It's got to be consistent. Anyway,
exactly. You got to be dialed in.
Anyway, Casey, I got a basketball question for you, a philosophical basketball question. The NBA seems to be going more to 0 and 1 pass possessions as a part of the offensive landscape. Point guards are so talented. Screen rolls happen so quickly once the ball crosses half court that on many possessions, 2 or 3 players end up standing around. I mean, that's today's NBA. Having said that, do you think the Trailblazers can afford, as a result of Dame and CJ's incredible ball handling skills, to fall into that pattern of play?
No, I don't. And the reason is because, Terry's offense is predicated on motion, both for the ball and for players. And, I mean, while, it's nice to have guys like Damian and CJ who can go one-on-one and get their own shot, particularly, not to take anything away from Damian, but CJ really, with his hesitation and kind of the way that he pokes and prods, is really, I've been not surprised, but pleasantly, surprised to see his ability to kind of get to his spots on the floor. But I think that's maybe one of the issues we've seen in some of these fourth quarters with the Trailblazers is that, when other teams start to lock down a bit and maybe that motion starts to not be what it should be, then teams are able to key in on guys like Damian and CJ, and that's when you really need that motion the most. That's when you need guys coming off cutters and getting into the lane and making themselves available, because those guys are always going to draw the most attention on the defensive end, and that's when you need the other guys on the team to kind of step up and make themselves available. And again, getting back to Farouk, I feel like he's done a really nice job of that. I think that's why you've seen his 3-point percentage go up precipitously this year. Granted, he's been working on it a lot, but he's getting some really good looks, particularly from the corners, because he is making himself available when that ball starts to move and when teams really start to lock in on CJ and Dame.
You go with the precipitously, and we are talking nothing but precipitation here in the Northwest tonight, my friend.
It is wet, and I had to actually say it twice, too, so I shouldn't get any credit for that.
Hey, come on,
we all looked at each other in the studio, and you know how small this studio is. We went camera to camera, Holton to Adam back to Holton, all around.
That's spelling bee type stuff.
Good.
That's no place for me.
I used the term analgesic today on one of the earlier interviews, and I was questioned about that as well. I was happy to say that I actually did use it correctly, so that was good. But I even kind of get in over my own head sometimes.
If you were to get paid by the word, I'm telling you, you'd be a rich man. I'm telling you.
Maybe talking. Writing-wise, though, I like to keep it short and sweet. I like to let the quotes do the talking, and I pretty much want to get out of the way when I'm writing a story.
Well, we do appreciate your time, as always, on an off day down in Houston. Casey Holdahl, Blazers beat reporter, joining us live. Casey, thanks for the time, and let's go get this final one tomorrow on this road trip.
Yeah, fingers crossed, guys. Take care over there.
All right, stay away from Meg the Buck, all right?
Yeah, hopefully he's not going to hear it. Clutch, though, has had his eye on me for years, though.
Yeah, that's true. I know. All right, buddy. Take care. We'll talk later on. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We'll be back to wrap up Trailblazers Courtside right after this timeout. Go ahead, say something, Holton.